Mr. President, I want to speak today about an amendment that I've offered with my friend Senator Casey from Pennsylvania on the highway bill. It's amendment number 1540. And in my state, and I think in the whole country, the question that we hear over and over again is, where are the private sector jobs? What can we do to get the economy back on track? There are really very few places the federal government can create private sector jobs. One of the few places we can do that is in public works like the highway bill, where most of the work to build a new bridge or new highway is done by a competitive bid and by private sector employers and private sector employees. And while we probably take a different approach to how we get there, I think all of us understand that it's critical we work together to find common ground to create jobs and to create economic growth. This infrastructure bill could be, and I hope turns out to be, a good start. There's no doubt that infrastructure is the foundation of our economy. Quality transportation is vital to connect people and communities, to connect people to the places they work, to connect the things they make to the places they need to go, and that doesn't happen without a good infrastructure program, and one that maintains and expands as needs to be the infrastructure that we have. I'm very hopeful that this bill can provide that additional element to getting our economy back on track. At the heart of a problem for small towns and for local governments in so many states, and particularly in Missouri, is the bridge system that is not part of the federal structure. It's the so-called off-system bridge network, where local communities are responsible for bridges. I think Missouri has perhaps more bridges than any other state. I was in one of our counties just recently where the county itself, and we have 115 counties, so unlike some of our western states, the counties aren't huge. They're designed to be compact, and people could get across them in the 1830s and the 1820s and 30s in one day with before automobiles. So we have lots of counties, and in one of them has 148 bridges. Our smallest county by population, with only 4,000 people, has 100 bridges. So every 40 people in that county are essentially responsible for maintaining a bridge. And bridges are an expensive thing. That off-system bridge network carries school buses, emergency vehicles, lots of agricultural products, families going about their daily routine, and without those bridges, that local infrastructure just doesn't work. Now, what we're suggesting in this amendment and calling for in this amendment is simply to continue the current policy. We're not talking about any new money for bridges. We're not talking about any new program for bridges, but the bill itself doesn't continue the 15% of the bridge funds that has been allocated for some time now to local government. This would just continue to have that same 15% going to local governments. There are almost 600,000 bridges in the country, more than 590,000. 50% of those are considered off-system, and approximately 28% of that 50% is currently considered deficient. 32% of the bridges in Missouri in the off-bridge system are considered deficient. They either aren't adequate for the traffic they now carry or are in need of repairs. 1 out of 3 bridges in our state needs an investment. The new penalty section, the underlying bill that would replace the current off-system bridge program, really makes that program even more uncertain at times when communities and job creators need it the most. Without our amendment, states would only have to sustain the previous number of deficient bridges every other year in order to avoid investing in their off-system bridges. It's a formula that doesn't work. It might work in big communities that have lots of miles that they maintain, but I doubt that. I think this really makes an inconsistent investment in bridges all over the country. Our amendment ensures that counties are not left bearing the full responsibility of these off-system bridges. And if they are left bearing that full responsibility, most of these bridges, or many of these bridges, just won't be fixed. This has been a major source of funding for counties working on bridges. This amendment would give states and counties the proper tools and resources and the assurance of a steady flow of funding in order to invest in the nation's bridges. Additionally, the amendment establishes a procedure where the Transportation Secretary can rescind this requirement if state and local officials determine they have inadequate needs to justify these expenditures. In other words, if they can't justify spending the money in their state, then the federal government clearly doesn't have to allocate that 15% to local communities and to states for the off-system program. When I listen to community leaders, and certainly when I listen to county commissioners, this is a topic that comes up in most of our counties with great concern, and the counties it doesn't come up wouldn't have to apply for the money. That 15% allocated appropriately will make a big difference. Community leaders and job creators are looking for things that allow them to prepare for a more certain future. They need the ability to look beyond 6 months or a year to plan and anticipate how they're going to repair bridges, which bridges they're going to look at this year, which bridges they will then put off till next year. But right now they really would have no way of knowing whether there'd be any federal assistance to these communities or not. We need to be sure that we provide this certainty for our off-system bridges. If we're going to promote job creation and economic development, we have to work together here in the nation's capital to make smart investments in our nation's transportation system if we're going to provide communities and job creators with greater certainty to prepare for the future. I want to thank Senator Casey for his hard work on this issue. I'm glad to join him in this amendment. It's critical to the state of Missouri and many other states. The National Association of Counties, the National League of Cities, the National Conference of Mayors, the National Association of County Engineers, the American Public Works Association, the National Association of Regional Councils, and the National Association of Development Officials are all in support of this amendment, and I hope we have it included in the amendments we get to vote on, and I urge my colleagues to join in this bipartisan effort to create more certainty for local governments. And as I yield back, Mr. President, I notice there's not a quorum.